If you have diabetes, you probably already know that not all foods are actually good for us. A lot of different foods can actually cause blood sugar spikes and can worsen diabetes. We know that managing diabetes is extremely important, and we know that keeping your blood sugar levels can help reduce complications of diabetes. Things that you can get with uncontrolled diabetes would be things like vision loss, blindness, amputations, kidney disease, heart attacks, strokes, and so much more. But of course, the voice of diabetes here wants to teach you how to avoid all those complications and things that you should avoid in order to avoid worsening your diabetes. So let's get started and talk about the different kinds of foods that I want you to avoid so that we can lead healthier lives. And of course, we don't need to take as many medications. We know that medications can be great in certain circumstances, but I always tell my patients and all you guys worldwide, the number one medication that I recommend in the world is always going to be diet and exercise. We know that those two are irreplaceable. Undoubtedly, there's nothing better than diet and exercise because when we eat and when we are active, of course, we tend to feel better. And of course, we can control blood sugar levels, we can control our blood pressure levels, we can improve our mental health, and so much more. Before we get started, this is your host, Diana Bytyqi. I'm an APRN here in the United States, and I manage diabetes all day long. It is my passion to teach and my passion to manage diabetes. And I want to teach all of you guys worldwide so we can beat diabetes together. If you are new, please consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with others if you think it's going to help them. All right, enough of that boring stuff. Let's get started now. Number one, you want to avoid highly processed foods that can have a lot of refined carbohydrates, meaning a lot of simple sugars that can really spike our blood sugar levels. So you want to avoid things like white bread, white pasta, sugary cereals, and processed snacks. Because unfortunately, we know that a lot of us tend to love those kind of things, but unfortunately, they can really spike up your blood sugar levels. And the more of those we eat, the more our body craves. And pretty much we just go on a downhill spiral after that. So try to avoid those whenever you can. Number two, sugary beverages. I mean, this should come to no surprise for most of us. We know regular sodas, fruit juices, energy drinks, and other sugar beverages really raise blood sugar levels and can worsen diabetes. You want to opt for things like water, herbal teas. You can make your unsweetened iced tea if you would like to, of course, in moderation. If you really are a soda drinker, if you really like juices, normally I tell my patients to start cutting down. Some things that they can do is they can start adding 50% water and 50% juice and gradually start to cut down on your juice intake, and your body will kind of adjust and you will no longer want to drink all that sugar because your body will feel very weird. I know this because personally I've limited all of these beverages in my life. I only drink water and I wouldn't want it any other way, but it was a process. Number three, for all you sweet tooth people out there, is sweets and desserts. We know that these are obviously a no-go. There's a lot of refined sugar in most of these, and they will spike up your blood sugar levels instantly. They will worsen insulin resistance, meaning your body becomes even more resistant than it already is. It can lead to a lot of weight gain. So anytime you can avoid sweets and desserts, please do so. Normally, things like candies, cakes, pastries, other sugary things like donuts. If you really have a sweet tooth, I would recommend more fruits. Of course, in moderation, you don't want to overdo it with fruit, but you can have berries, strawberries, any type of thing that you like to kind of get that craving, that sweet craving away, so you're not indulging in all the things that obviously will make our diabetes worse, and they're not good for our overall health anyways. Number four is going to be a fried food. So fried food can really contribute to weight gain and actually may impact insulin sensitivity. There's been a lot of studies done on fried foods, and unfortunately people that consume fried foods become more insulin resistant, and they're not as insulin sensitive anymore. So that insulin that your body is using is no longer being used appropriately by your body. So your body is making more and more and more of it, trying to reach the same outcome. And unfortunately, too much insulin in our body can lead to weight gain and more hunger, and then it just kind of is a revolving door. So with that being said, try to avoid fried foods as much as you can. You want to choose healthier options like baking, grilling, or even steaming. are much better options. We're halfway there. So number 5 is going to be your high-fat meats. Processed and fatty meats such as sausage, bacon, and certain red meats can be high in saturated fat. We know that saturated fat is not good for our overall health. Unfortunately, people with diabetes are a lot more likely to develop heart disease than people without diabetes. So if you have diabetes, you really want to consume as little saturated fat as possible. So you want to start reading nutritional labels and really getting smart. Better options would be like skinless chicken, fish, tofu, legumes. Those are much healthier options. You want to avoid red meat or pork products as much as possible because they can certainly always tend to be very high in saturated fat. We want to keep our arteries that feed our heart and the rest of our bodies as healthy and as clean as we can. And that is by starting off by eliminating or limiting the amount of saturated fats that we are consuming. Number 6 is going to be full fat dairy. Dairy is always controversial and people always talk about what should they do. But normally with diabetes, you want to avoid things that are very high in fat. And things like milk and yogurt can have a lot of fat in them. For that reason, you want to be very careful. You can still include milk and yogurt, which tend to be very good for our bone health. But what you want to do is choose the low fat or fat-free options. Those tend to be much better option for us. And personally, that's what I do. I'm always trying to make better options whenever I can. And I start by either buying low fat or no fat as much as I can. Number 7 is going to be a trans fat. So again, talking about fats because fats are unfortunately not a good thing for us. When we're talking about saturated or trans fat, there are good fats, which I will talk about in a different video. But today we're talking about things that we should avoid. Trans fat can be found in some processed and packaged snacks. So you want to avoid those as much as possible. Things like frozen pizza, frozen waffles, chips, pretzels, all the finer things. We really want to avoid those as much as possible because they do have a lot of trans fat in them. And obviously we want to limit those because we don't want to have a heart attack or a stroke, especially because diabetes already puts us at higher risk for that. We want to make sure we do everything in our power that we can to avoid things that will add more fuel to the fire, in other words. Number 8, high sodium foods. Believe it or not, most of us, over 80% of us here in the United States, overconsume too much salt in our diet. So why is that? Because unfortunately, a lot of our food is processed and they just saturate them with salt to preserve the food that can be stored at shelf for a long time. As a result, we're consuming too much salt. We know that excessive salt intake can contribute to high blood pressure, which is a risk factor for heart disease. There's a majority of people in the United States and most of diabetics, unfortunately, do have high blood pressure. They kind of go hand in hand together for some reason. So for that reason, you really want to avoid things that are very salty, canned food like soups and fast food. Those tend to be very high in sodium, and therefore, please try to really read nutritional labels and get smart about how much sodium you're putting in your body. And normally I tell my patients to use alternatives, not salt, when they're adding more salt to their food. Personally, I use a lot of lemon now because I know that, high blood pressure and diabetes both run in my family, and I want to avoid them both if I can. For that reason, whenever I'm eating anything, I try to add lemon to it. Or make sure you always try your food. If you're in the habit of just adding salt, that's a no-go, especially with diabetes or for anyone for that matter. So what you want to do is try your food and try to adjust your taste buds a little bit. Once we start to gradually cut back on certain things, our taste buds do adjust. Therefore, if you are a salt lover, start to cut back, and gradually your body will no longer crave that amount of salt that you normally would. Number 9, alcohol intake. We know, this is a no-brainer. We know that alcohol can really have an effect on our blood sugar levels. Believe it or not, our sugars can go very low with alcohol intake, or they can go very high with sugary alcohol intake. Therefore, you want to be very mindful, and you want to be in consultation with your doctor. Normally, I tell my patients to limit 1 drink per day for a female, and then 2 drinks for a male. Those are the guidelines. Whenever you can avoid alcohol, though, I do say just opt for water. That's a much better and a healthier option. But if you must drink in moderation, and of course, always know your limit. That way you really can stay in good health and, of course, keep your blood sugar levels well controlled. Number 10 is going to be your white potato and processed grains. I'm so sorry to all the potato lovers, but white potato is very high on the glycemic index, therefore it really spikes our blood sugar levels. We want to be very careful when we are having white potato. I choose whole grains instead, like brown rice, quinoa, barley, oats, buckwheat, whole grain cereals. Those are going to be a lot more nutritious for you, a lot more fiber, lower on the glycemic index, and you're not going to see such a spike in blood sugar levels. And of course, you're going to feel more full and just generally much better. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know your thoughts down below and other food options that you think are good options that you can share with us and the rest of the viewers here on The Voice of Diabetes.